Now to move on to the second generation of painters, who, as I said earlier, were students of Shakir Ali. You have Zahoor Ikhlaq, you have Bashir Mirza, and Jamil Naqsh, of course, was never taught in National College of Art, but far more profoundly influenced by Shakir Ali than any one of them. So I'll start with him first. Jamil Naqsh received his training in the painting of miniature from Haji Sharif at National College of Art. But from what I have seen of his work in this form, he did not achieve mastery because, as he told me once, his interest was in painting, and that too in oil painting. As I have said earlier, Jamil Naqsh was profoundly influenced by Shakir Ali, and he learned the art of composition from him. It was later that he came to be preoccupied with the figure of a nude and birds, and started painting them in various ways. Jamil Naqsh's excellence lies in that he creates a surface which becomes an end in itself. The nude and the birds are there to add elements of design to this surface, but it is the surface itself which is worked sometimes with the precision of a goldsmith, patiently, preciously, which add to the beauty or the pleasure of the nude. Bashir Mirza had a talent slightly different from Jamil Naqsh, a good draftsman who did a series called Portraits of Pakistan, which became very popular. But he had more vitality, more zest, a kind of forcefulness which we find lacking in the withdrawing Jamil Naqsh. And these traits of personality came to be seen in Bashir Mirza's paintings. If he had not given up painting and moved into advertising, I feel that he would have developed into one of Pakistan's foremost figurative expressionist painter. The last series that he did, and which he called Lonely Girls, painted under the influence of Gauguin, yet struck off in a direction which could be called Bashir Mirza's own original device and design. Of the two, I would say that Zahoor Ikhlaq is certainly the most talented. Shakir Ali told me once that amongst his students he was the finest draftsman that he has come across. Zahoor Ikhlaq is now head of the Department of Fine Arts in National College of Art, where he started teaching after completing his education there. Has been our only experimenter in Pakistan, not having stuck to a particular way of painting, but moving from one to another. His talent is so wide, so abundant that he can paint in several manners and possesses a remarkable gift with his brush. He paints figures, human figures, as well as he paints or crafts his abstractions. He has done some of the most abstract works that I have seen in Pakistan, in that the whole canvas is in different shades of black, and in one corner you will find a little image of a man on a horse from our miniature, or a little piece of decoration from an illuminated page of our traditional manuscript. He has painted large canvases in the same manner to which he has attached pieces of furniture from Swat. In this way, trying to give us a message that there is no gulf between West and East, that the abstract style that he is cultivating is not far removed from Swat, that the latest modern syntax that he is using can be related through the painter, through him, to our miniature tradition, the tradition of our page making. He is doing these things in a manner to suggest that as a painter, he is not only interested in creating images, in creating designs, he is not only interested in putting paint on surfaces, but also integrating cultures, studying the relationship between the two, dealing in a sense with the peculiar position which any artist occupies in a third world country. The question is, where do you go? Perforce, you have to relate to Europe and America, as we do in every aspect of our life. And then the question arises, wherein lies our integrity? Where does it stand Zahoor Ikhlaq? And he is the only painter who has confronted this question seriously amongst his age group and tried to give answers to that. As a painter, he is doing works which has cultural and even political implications, which painters of his group, painters of his generation haven't been doing. He has also sculpted, tried his hand at creating figurative as well as abstract pieces of a sculpture, and this too in an attempt to understand, to analyze, to explain and define the integrity and the value of a painter, of a creative artist in our society. The generation which follows next, consisting of painters like Lubna Agha, Naheed, Qudsiya Azmat, Meher Afroz, Mashkoor Raza, Jamil Mansoor, and several others. Each one of them highly talented, but most of them preoccupied with a style which can be called, within inverted commas, modern, or I would say modernistic. I'll explain what I mean. Before I do that, I would also like to say a few words about another painter who belongs to the generation of Zahoor, Ikhlaq, Jamil Naqsh and Bashir Mirza. That is Mansoor Rahi. Born in I think Murshidabad. He was a student of Kibriya, inspired by Zainul Abidin and particularly his famous paintings on the Bengal famine of 1942. He began painting under the influence of Picasso to the extent of copying him. From there moved on again using the human figure to its cubistic formulation, again in the manner of Picasso, putting the human figure flat on the canvas. Instead of painting it in the round, taking bits and pieces of human anatomy and putting it together, dividing them through line and joining them through line at the same time. This is the analytical approach. Till in his finest work, the maturest work, he came to disintegrate the human body and sometimes even the image of a horse, picking up bits and pieces from these images or the body of these images and integrating them in a new order and creating a design on his canvas in which lines play a very important part. In fact, these lines keep these pieces together in their place. These lines create the design. And using colors, the kind of blues and red and pale yellow and even white, which I have often felt you associate with East Bengal. Sometimes the light which he manages to capture in his painting is the light that you capture in the sky of what is Bangladesh now after a heavy downpour. The typical indigo blue that he uses in his painting, it reminds me of the goddess Kali. And the total effect of some of his works has given me the impression that the disintegration and at the same time joining together of human and animal bodies, the use of color, particularly the use of red like fire, is a kind of a sacrificial rite which this painter is very fond of creating. Once again, I would say that like Sadiq, he is also interested in pain because you can sense pain in his work. But the difference is that Mansoor Rahi as a painter is detached from the impression of pain that he depicts. That unlike Sadiq, he is not capable of representing pain both from within and outside. And the order of the work that he creates to represent his psychic predispositions are certainly not of the same order as Sadiq. Now to move on to the younger painters that I have just named and said that they paint in a particular style which can be called modernistic or modernist. The elements of this style are that they are all interested in following the grammar of modern painting, that is, the use, the flatness of the canvas as its only depth, if I may use a paradox, that it's by the choice of color, the overlapping of color, its application in thin or thick layers, the use of palette knife, that They create the differences between overlapping planes, the differences between front and depth. For the elements of design, they use human figure. Some of them use totally abstract elements which are neither geometric nor biomorphic. They are just elements, cubistic, triangular, circular, ovoid, and through arranging these, they are basically interested in creating designs. Now, this has been pushed to an extent in the work of some of these painters, where it begins to defeat the very purpose of art. In other words, it has become a formula with some of them. And the reason why this has become so is that today paintings are selling more than they used to several years back. Naheed has been experimental amongst them. Lately, Mashkoor Raza has also started using the nudes. Curiously enough, in trying to find new ways to paint, you find today that most of these painters have moved towards some kind of figuration and seem to be preoccupied with human bodies. Now, in the case of most of them, the presence of nude in their painting has added to its commercial value. Though in one of our recent exhibitions, the use of the same female figure by Naheed had far more serious pretensions. As a woman, she was preoccupied with the suffering and humiliation of the woman. But the problem with Naheed is that once she starts painting, she is so enraptured by the pleasure of painting, the pleasure of the very touch and feel of paint, that the message is forgotten. And like a child, she is engrossed in creating beauties, transmuting pain and suffering and ugliness into the pleasures, the beauties, and the brilliance of coloring and design. You will find, or at least I find, that at this point of time, Pakistani painting has come to a very dangerous stage. While commercially it is very successful, there is a viable market in the country, and the temptations to sell have forced many of our painters to make compromises or to refuse to make experiments and deviate from the style of those works which have a market, with the result that leadership in painting today is missing. We find that some of these younger painters, in their attempt to get away from their own style, have started copying some of their elders and those aspects of some of their elders which again have got commercial values. For instance, the use of the nude, as I said earlier, it comes from Jamil Naqsh, and there is a particular painter, I don't want to immortalize him by naming him here, who is making a good living, who is making good money. Certainly I don't know if he's making a good living, but certainly making good money by copying Jamil Naqsh and doing it very well. I have some hope left that Zahoor Ikhlaq, who at the moment is on a 4 month study tour of the United States of America, he alone has the talent to provide leadership, but unfortunately with him also, the man doesn't have the leadership quality, doesn't have that dynamism which can move things. Still, I always pray, if I pray about painting and conditions of painting in Pakistan, that God give him the strength to lead Pakistani painting again. I am not despondent, even though things do not improve. I believe that it's only after much badness that goodness comes. That as more and more painters appear on the scene and find that it's possible for them to make a living from painting, as more and more people paint, as more and more are lured by the market, the better for painting. Because if I am excused for using this expression, it is only out of muck that flowers can bloom. Thank you.